My name is Amanda Wilson, and I am 29 years old. When my grandfather passed away last month, he left me his entire inheritance. It was substantial enough to change my life forever, but my mother, who had always struggled with money, immediately demanded I hand it over. When I refused, she invited me to what she called a family meeting to work things out. The moment I walked in and saw unfamiliar faces, I knew I had been ambushed. If you are watching this, let me know where you are from in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe to hear how I stood up for myself in this unexpected family showdown. Growing up, my grandfather Harold was my rock. While my mother Patricia struggled with basic financial responsibilities, Grandpa Harold was the epitome of financial wisdom. He grew up during the Great Depression, started from nothing, and built a successful construction business through sheer determination and smart decision-making. We spent countless weekends together where he would teach me about saving, investing, and the value of working hard for what you earn. Our bond was special because he saw something in me that my mother never did: a sense of responsibility. From the age of 8, I would help him organize his receipts for tax season. By 12, I was balancing his checkbook. He would smile and say, "Amanda, you have got a good head for numbers. That will take you far in life." Meanwhile, at home, things were chaotic. My mother, Patricia, remarried when I was 10 to a man named Frank Thompson. Frank was controlling and domineering, especially with money. They had 2 sons together, Jake and Dylan, who were now 23 and 21. My younger sister, Rachel, who was 25, was from my mother's first marriage like me, but unlike me, she fell under our mother's manipulative influence. Money was always tight in our household, not because there was not enough coming in, but because my mother and Frank mismanaged everything. Credit card debt, payday loans, borrowing from friends and family they never repaid. I watched this pattern repeat throughout my childhood. When I turned 16 and got my first job at a local grocery store, my mother would regularly borrow from my paycheck. I rarely saw that money again. "Amanda, family helps family," she would say whenever I asked about repayment. "When you are a mother, you will understand." Despite the financial chaos at home, I excelled in school. My grandfather paid for my accounting textbooks when I showed interest in the field. He encouraged me when I received a partial scholarship to State University. I worked part-time throughout college to cover the remaining costs, refusing to take student loans, despite my mother's insistence that I should live a little and worry about the debt later. "Your grandfather is filling your head with all this worry about money," she would complain. "Nobody lives without debt these days." But I graduated debt-free with my accounting degree and secured a job at a respected firm in the city. I moved into a modest apartment that I could afford on my salary and began building my savings. My mother and Frank were baffled by my lifestyle choices. "With what you make, you could get a much nicer place," Frank would comment during rare family visits. "You could buy a new car instead of that used thing." What they did not understand was that I was following my grandfather's example. Live below your means, save for emergencies, invest wisely for the future. When my grandfather fell ill last year, I visited him regularly at the hospital. His once robust frame had diminished, but his mind remained sharp. During one of our final conversations, he held my hand tightly. "Amanda, I have watched you grow into a responsible young woman," he said, his voice weaker than I had ever heard it. "I am proud of the choices you have made." He spoke about his will then, something we had never discussed before. "I have made provisions for you," he said carefully. "I know you will use what I leave behind wisely." I tried to change the subject, uncomfortable talking about his death, but he insisted. "Your mother," he sighed. "She has never understood the value of money, always wanting more, never appreciating what she has. I have tried to help her over the years, but money through her fingers is like water through a sieve." I nodded, having witnessed this my entire life. "Promise me you will stand firm," he said, squeezing my hand. "Whatever happens after I am gone, remember what I taught you." I promised, not fully understanding what he meant at the time. 3 weeks later, he was gone. The loss left a hole in my heart that I knew would never fully heal. He was more than a grandfather to me. He was my mentor, my supporter, the parent figure who believed in me when my own mother was too self-absorbed to notice my achievements. The day of his funeral was somber. I noticed my mother checking her watch repeatedly during the service, as if she had somewhere more important to be. Frank kept whispering to her. My stepbrothers Jake and Dylan looked bored. Only Rachel shed tears besides me, though I suspected hers were more from the emotional atmosphere than personal loss, as she had rarely visited Grandpa Harold. Little did I know that day how dramatically things were about to change, and how I would need to summon every lesson my grandfather had taught me to face what was coming. 3 days after the funeral, we gathered at the office of my grandfather's attorney, Martin Green, for the reading of the will. The small conference room felt tense. My mother kept smoothing her skirt and exchanging glances with Frank. My stepbrothers scrolled through their phones, barely paying attention. Rachel sat beside me, fidgeting with a tissue. Mr. Green adjusted his glasses and began reading. The first few minutes covered standard legal language that I barely processed through my grief. Then he reached the crucial section. To my beloved granddaughter Amanda Wilson, who has shown wisdom beyond her years and a responsibility that gives me great pride, I leave the entirety of my estate, including my home investments, savings, and business holdings, with the confidence that she will honor my legacy. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat in shock, having no idea the extent of what he was leaving me. While I knew my grandfather was comfortable, I had never imagined the full scope of his assets. My mother broke the silence. "This cannot be right," she said, her voice rising. "I am his daughter. There must be some mistake." Mr. Green looked at her calmly. "There is no mistake, Mrs. Thompson. Mr. Wilson was very clear about his wishes." "But what about the rest of us?" Frank demanded. "Nothing for his own daughter, his other grandchildren?" Mr. Wilson made his decisions after careful consideration. Mr. Green replied, "The will is legally binding." My mother turned to me, her face contorted with anger I had never seen before. "You manipulated him. When he was sick," she accused. "You turned him against his own family." "That is not true," I said, finding my voice. "I never asked for this." "Then you will not mind sharing it," Frank interjected. "Family shares with family, right?" The meeting dissolved into chaos after that. My mother alternated between accusations and tear-filled pleas. Frank made comments about fixing this situation. Mr. Green eventually asked them to leave if they could not compose themselves. Outside the office, my mother grabbed my arm. "We need to talk about this," she hissed. "This money belongs to the family, not just you." "I need time to process everything," I said, pulling away. "This just happened." "Do not be selfish," Amanda Frank said. "Your grandfather clearly was not in his right mind." I managed to get to my car, hands shaking as I started the engine. My phone began ringing immediately. I ignored the calls from my mother and drove home in a daze. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. My mother called multiple times daily, her approach shifting between guilt, anger, and occasional attempts at affection that felt hollow after years of emotional distance. "Amanda, honey, I am your mother. I changed your diapers, stayed up with you when you were sick. How can you turn your back on me now, when we need this?" When I did not immediately agree, the tone would shift. "After everything I sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me, by hoarding your grandfather's money." Frank left threatening voicemails. "You better think long and hard about what you are doing to this family. There are ways to contest wills, you know." Even my step-siblings got involved. Jake called to tell me I was tearing the family apart. Dylan sent text messages suggesting I had manipulated our grandfather. Rachel was the only one who did not attack me directly, though she sent several tearful messages about how much the family was suffering. 2 weeks after the will reading, my mother called with what she claimed was an emergency. "We are about to lose the house," she sobbed into the phone. "The bank is foreclosing. If you do not help us, we will be on the street by next month." This claim triggered something in me. Throughout my life, I had watched my mother fabricate or exaggerate financial crises to manipulate others. This time, I decided to verify her story before responding. I contacted a friend who worked in real estate and asked her to check public records on my parents' home. What I discovered confirmed my suspicions. There was no foreclosure proceeding. In fact, they had refinanced just 6 months ago and taken out considerable equity from the house. That discovery was the turning point. If they would lie about something so easily verifiable, what else were they lying about? I decided to meet with Mr. Green again to fully understand what my grandfather had left me and why. "Your grandfather anticipated this reaction," Mr. Green told me during our meeting. "He was very aware of your mother's financial habits and concerns about how she might pressure you. The inheritance was substantial. My grandfather's home was worth over $500,000. His investments and savings totaled nearly $1 million. And the construction business, though smaller than in its heyday, was still profitable with loyal employees who had worked for him for decades. He left you everything because he trusted you to make wise decisions," Mr. Green said. "Not because he did not love your mother or the rest of the family." That evening, I made my decision. I would honor my grandfather's wishes. I would manage the inheritance responsibly, just as he had taught me. I would not give in to pressure tactics or manipulation. The money would not solve my mother's problems anyway. Without changing her relationship with money, any amount would eventually disappear, just as my grandfather had said. I texted my mother, "I have given this a lot of thought. I will not be sharing the inheritance. Grandpa made his wishes clear, and I intend to respect them." The storm that followed would test my resolve in ways I never imagined. The morning after I sent my text, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. Her eyes were red either from crying or lack of sleep. "We need to talk face to face," she said when I opened the door. "Not over impersonal text messages." I reluctantly let her in, setting boundaries immediately. "I have to leave for work in 30 minutes. She wasted no time getting to the point. "Amanda, do you have any idea what this feels like? To have your own father pass over you and give everything to your daughter instead." "I am sure it hurts," I acknowledged. "But Grandpa made his decision for reasons that were important to him." "And what about all I have done for you?" she countered, her voice rising. "Who carried you for 9 months? Who stayed home with you while your father built his career? Who sacrificed everything for you children?" This was familiar territory. My mother's version of parenting always came with the expectation of repayment. "Mom, I appreciate what you did as a parent, but that does not mean I owe you Grandpa's inheritance." Her expression hardened. "So this is how you repay family loyalty, by keeping everything for yourself." "This is not about loyalty," I said firmly. "This is about respecting Grandpa's wishes." "Your grandfather was old and confused," she snapped. "He did not understand how much we struggle financially." "Did you tell him you were struggling when you asked him for money last year to renovate your kitchen?" I asked. The renovation had cost thousands, with high-end appliances and imported tile. She flushed. That was different. The house needed updating. The conversation continued in circles until I had to leave for work. As I closed the door behind her, she called out, "This is not over, Amanda. Family takes care of family." The next attempt came from Frank, who cornered me outside my office building during lunch 3 days later. Seeing him leaning against my car sent a chill down my spine. "We need to chat, Amanda," he said with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "About your future in this family." "I do not have time for this, Frank," I replied, trying to move past him. He stepped closer. "Make time." because right now you are causing a lot of pain to people who care about you. Is that a threat? Not at all, he said smoothly. Just pointing out that actions have consequences. Your mother is devastated. Your sister cries herself to sleep. Is money really worth destroying your family relationships? I stood my ground. Grandpa left me this inheritance because he trusted me to use it wisely. I am honoring his wishes. Frank's friendly facade slipped. Do you really want the extended family knowing how you manipulated a sick old man? What will people think when they hear how you turned him against his own daughter? That is not what happened. It is your word against ours, he said coldly. Think about your reputation, Amanda. Think about your career. People talk. As he walked away, I felt my hands trembling. I had never liked Frank, but this calculating side of him was truly frightening. The stepbrothers took a more direct approach. Jake and Dylan showed up at my apartment one evening, pushing past me when I opened the door. This is getting ridiculous, Amanda Jake said, pacing my living room. Mom is a wreck because of you. Yeah, Dylan chimed in. You are tearing the family apart over money. Is that really who you want to be? I did not ask for this situation. I replied, standing my ground. But I am going to respect my grandfather's wishes. Do you know how selfish you sound, Jake scoffed. We are family. We are supposed to support each other. Like you supported me when I graduated college, I asked. Or when I got my promotion last year. Neither of you even called. That is different, Dylan muttered. Is it? Or does family only matter when you want something from me? They left after more accusations and guilt trips, but not before Jake knocked a photo of my grandfather off the shelf accidentally on his way out. My sister Rachel was the hardest to resist. She invited me to coffee, her eyes brimming with tears, as she described the tension at home. Mom barely eats, she said. She feels like Dad betrayed her from beyond the grave, and now you are doing the same. Rachel has... Mom actually told you what she plans to do with the money if I give it to her? I asked gently. Rachel hesitated. Pay off debts, I think. Maybe help Jake with his business idea. What business idea? He wants to start a sports bar with his friends. Mom said she would loan him the startup money. I sighed. Jake had never held a job for more than 6 months. His business ideas changed weekly. And did she mention buying a vacation home in Florida? Or a new car for Frank? Rachel's eyes widened. How did you know about that? Because I know, Mom. This is not about need, Rachel. It is about wants. Expensive wants that will burn through money quickly, with nothing to show for it. My sister bit her lip. But still, Amanda, it is a lot of money. Couldn't you share some of it? The pressure was getting to me. That night, I called my best friend Tara for perspective. They are driving me crazy, I confessed, making me feel like the villain in some family drama. Because they are manipulating you, Tara said firmly. This is what they have always done, Amanda. You have told me stories about your mother's financial guilt trip since college. But what if they are right? What if I am being selfish? Your grandfather made his choice for a reason, she reminded me. He knew exactly what he was doing. Her words prompted me to contact Mr. Green again. Did my grandfather leave any explanation for his decision, I asked when we met? Anything I could share with my family to help them understand. He opened a folder and removed an envelope. He left this letter to be given to you if there was family conflict. I was hoping it would not be necessary. The letter was written in my grandfather's shaky handwriting. My dear Amanda, if you are reading this, then the situation I feared has come to pass. Your mother is pressuring you about the inheritance. I need you to know that my decision was made with complete clarity of mind and purpose. Over the years, I have given your mother significant financial help. Each time the money vanished with little improvement in her situation. I paid for 3 different business ventures that failed due to poor management. I covered credit card debt multiple times only to watch new debt accumulate. I am leaving my estate to you because I have watched you grow into a thoughtful, responsible adult who understands the value of money and hard work. You will preserve what I have built and use it to create a secure future. Stand firm, Amanda. You deserve this inheritance, and you will use it wisely, with love and confidence. Grandpa Harold, reading his words brought tears to my eyes, but also strengthened my resolve. I was honoring his wishes by standing firm. That evening, my mother called with an unexpected proposition. Amanda, we need to have a family meeting, she said, her voice surprisingly conciliatory, just to talk things through calmly. No accusations, no demands. We are family, and we should be able to work this out together. Something about her tone made me suspicious. Who would be at this meeting? Just us, me, Frank, the kids. At our house this Saturday at noon, we can have lunch and talk like adults. After a moment's consideration, I agreed. Perhaps a calm discussion was what we needed. But as I hung up, a nagging feeling told me to prepare for something else entirely. The moment I ended the call with my mother, my suspicions began to grow. Her sudden shift to a reasonable, conciliatory tone after weeks of emotional manipulation did not feel genuine. This was the same woman who had once convinced me to loan her $3,000 for emergency dental work that mysteriously transformed into a weekend spa trip with her friends. I called Tara immediately to share my concerns. It sounds like a trap, she said bluntly after I described the invitation. Why the sudden change in approach, and why insist on having it at their house where they control the environment? Exactly what I was thinking, I replied. But if I refuse to go, I look like the unreasonable one who will not even discuss things. Then go, but go prepared, Tara advised. In fact, you should probably talk to a lawyer of your own before this meeting. The next morning, I began researching inheritance laws in our state. I learned about undue influence claims, which seemed to be what my mother was implying by suggesting I had manipulated my grandfather. I also discovered that, as the named beneficiary in a legally executed will, my position was strong, especially given my grandfather's sound mind when the will was created. Still, knowledge alone did not feel like enough protection. Following Tara's advice, I searched for an attorney specializing in estate law. The name Sophia Martinez appeared in several positive reviews with specific mentions of inheritance disputes. I called her office and explained my situation, emphasizing the upcoming family meeting. I can see you tomorrow afternoon, she said, after hearing the outline of my case. Bring any documentation you have regarding the will and inheritance. Sophia's office was warm and professional, with degrees and credentials displayed tastefully on the walls. She was perhaps 40, with a direct gaze and a reassuring manner. Family inheritance disputes are unfortunately common, she said after I had shared my story, especially when there is a significant estate involved. I just want to make sure I am legally protected, I explained. Something about this meeting feels off. We reviewed the will documents together. Sophia noted that my grandfather had taken every proper legal step, including having his mental competency verified by a physician before signing the will. This is a very solid will, she confirmed. Your grandfather clearly wanted to prevent any challenges. My mother keeps suggesting I manipulated him, I said. Could that claim hold up in court? It would be extremely difficult to prove, especially given these precautions, Sophia assured me. But that does not mean they will not try to pressure you personally. She leaned forward, her expression serious. Amanda, have they mentioned bringing anyone else to this family meeting? An attorney, perhaps? Or a financial advisor? No, I said, suddenly alarmed. They said it would just be family. In my experience, this type of sudden conciliatory approach often masks a new strategy. They may try to pressure you into signing something. She advised me not to sign anything regardless of pressure and to be wary of emotional manipulation tactics. Then she made a suggestion that would prove invaluable. "Would you like me to attend this meeting with you?" she asked. I could wait nearby and be available if needed. The relief I felt at her offer confirmed my anxiety about the meeting. "Would you really do that?" "Of course. Given what you have told me, I think it would be wise to have legal representation available." We made arrangements for Sophia to be parked near my parents' house during the meeting. I would text her if I needed support. Before I left, she made another suggestion. It might be prudent to bring a recording device hidden in your purse, perhaps. Our state allows one-party recording, meaning you can legally record conversations you participate in without informing others. The idea made me uncomfortable, but I recognized its value. "Do you really think that is necessary?" "I hope not," she said gently. "But if they are planning something improper, having evidence could be crucial." As Saturday approached, my unease grew. My mother texted several times with oddly cheerful messages about looking forward to resolving our little disagreement and mentions of making my favorite lunch. It was a level of maternal attention I had rarely received even as a child. The night before the meeting, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. It was my Uncle Joseph, my mother's brother, whom I rarely saw. "Amanda, I heard about the situation with your mom," he began awkwardly. "I just wanted to give you a heads up." "About what?" I asked, surprised by the call. He hesitated. "Look, Patricia called me yesterday asking about my friend who is an attorney. She had a lot of questions about contesting wills and what documents would be needed to transfer assets." My heart sank. "She is planning to ambush me with legal pressure. Is not she?" "I cannot say for sure," he replied. "But knowing your mom, just be careful tomorrow, okay? And for what it is worth, your grandfather made the right choice. Patricia has never been responsible with money." After thanking him for the warning, I called Sophia and updated her on this new information. She agreed to park even closer to the house and be ready to enter quickly if needed. That night, I barely slept, going over scenarios in my mind. I packed my grandfather's letter copies of the will and the small recording device Sophia had provided. I also prepared, mentally remembering my grandfather's confidence in me and his explicit wishes. The morning of the meeting, I stood in front of my mirror, giving myself a pep talk. "You are not the villain here," I told my reflection. "You are honoring Grandpa Harold's wishes. Stay strong." As I drove to my mother's house, I felt a strange calm replacing my anxiety. Whatever they had planned, I was prepared. I would not be manipulated or pressured into betraying my grandfather's trust. With Sophia nearby and documentation in hand, I was ready to face whatever awaited me behind that familiar front door. I pulled into the driveway of my mother's suburban home at exactly 12 noon. The house looked the same as always, a two-story colonial with the expensive landscaping Frank had insisted on installing last spring. My mother's red SUV sat in the driveway alongside Frank's luxury sedan and a black BMW I did not recognize. The unfamiliar car confirmed my suspicions. This was not just a family meeting. I texted Sophia, "Unknown car here. Starting recording now." Then I activated the device in my purse and approached the front door. Before I could knock, it swung open to reveal my mother wearing an outfit that looked new and expensive, her face arranged in a welcoming smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Amanda, sweetheart," she exclaimed, pulling me into a stiff hug. "Thank you for coming. We are all in the dining room." I followed her through the house, noting fresh flowers on the entry table and the smell of catered food wafting from the kitchen. This was not my mother's typical hosting style. She was putting on a show. The dining room tableau confirmed my worst fears. Frank sat at the head of the table dressed in a business suit despite it being a Saturday. Jake and Dylan flanked him, both unusually well-groomed. Rachel sat across from them looking uncomfortable. But most telling was the silver-haired man in an expensive suit, sitting beside Frank, a leather portfolio open in front of him. Amanda Frank said, standing with an artificial smile. Glad you could make it. This is Walter Simmons, a family friend who happens to be an attorney. He is here to help us sort through this situation amicably. The attorney nodded at me. Miss Wilson, a pleasure. I remained standing just inside the doorway. I thought this was supposed to be just family. Walter is practically family, my mother said quickly. He has been our attorney for years. Please sit down. Lunch is almost ready. I reluctantly took a seat, positioning myself nearest to the exit. So this is a legal meeting, not a family discussion. It is both. Frank interjected smoothly. We want to resolve this situation in a way that benefits everyone. The attorney cleared his throat. If I may, Miss Wilson. Your mother has explained the unfortunate misunderstanding regarding your grandfather's estate. There is no misunderstanding, I said firmly. My grandfather left his estate to me. The will is clear and legally binding. Yes, technically, Walter agreed with a condescending smile. However, wills created near the end of life, especially when the testator is ill, can sometimes reflect undue influence rather than true intentions. My mother jumped in. We are not saying you deliberately manipulated Dad, Amanda. Perhaps you did not even realize how your presence was affecting his decisions. This is ridiculous, I said. Grandpa was of sound mind when he made his will. His doctor confirmed it. Documentation can be arranged, Frank said dismissively. The point is, challenging the will would create a lengthy, expensive legal battle that would drain the very assets in question. Nobody wants that. Walter nodded sagely. Family disputes over inheritance can drag on for years. The emotional toll alone is devastating. I looked at each of their faces, realizing they had rehearsed this conversation. Even Jake and Dylan, usually disinterested in family matters, were watching attentively. So what exactly are you proposing? I asked, wanting to get their scheme out in the open. Walter smiled and pulled a document from his portfolio. We have drafted a very fair agreement. You would transfer the majority of the assets to your mother as your grandfather's daughter and rightful heir. You would retain a generous portion, say 20%, as a gift from your mother. I nearly laughed at the audacity. You want me to give up 80% of my inheritance voluntarily? It is the right thing to do, my mother insisted. Dad clearly was not thinking clearly. He would want his daughter provided for. And what would you do with the money? I asked her directly. She hesitated, glancing at Frank. Well, we have some debts to clear up, and then investments, of course. What investments? Jake leaned forward eagerly. I have this awesome business plan for a sports bar. Prime location, great concept. It just needs startup capital. And we have been looking at vacation properties in Florida, Frank added. A sound investment for the family. Mom also promised to help me with a down payment on a condo, Dylan chimed in. I turned to Rachel, who had remained silent. And what do you get out of this, Rachel? She looked down at her hands. They said they would help pay off my student loans. The naked greed in the room was stunning. None of them had mentioned preserving my grandfather's business or honoring his legacy. They saw his life's work as nothing more than a windfall to fund their consumption. Walter slid the document toward me. If you will just review and sign this transfer agreement, we can put this unfortunate situation behind us and be a family again. I felt a moment of vulnerability as 5 pairs of eyes focused on me expectantly. The weight of their disapproval and the implicit threat of being cut off from family pressed down on me. For a brief moment, I considered signing just to end the conflict. Then I remembered my grandfather's letter. His confidence in me, his explicit wishes, after witnessing decades of my mother's financial irresponsibility. I thought of the employees at his construction company who relied on stable leadership. I thought of all he had built through discipline and wise choices. Walter tapped an expensive pen on the signature line. Shall we proceed? The sooner this is resolved, the sooner healing can begin. I took a deep breath and found my courage. Meeting his gaze directly, I smiled and uttered the words I had prepared. Funny, I brought someone too. The room fell silent as I reached for my phone and sent a quick text. My mother's face tightened with suspicion. "What do you mean?" she demanded. "Who did you bring?" "My attorney," I replied calmly. "She is waiting outside." Frank's face flushed dark red. "You brought a lawyer to a family meeting. How could you be so distrustful?" The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "Says the man who ambushed me with his own attorney," I responded, gesturing toward Walter. "Walter is a family friend," my mother insisted, her voice rising. "This is completely different." The doorbell rang, causing everyone to freeze momentarily. Jake started to get up, but I was already on my feet. "I will get that," I said firmly. Moments later, I returned with Sofia Martinez beside me. She carried a professional leather briefcase and wore an expression of polite determination. "Good afternoon," she said, surveying the room with a practiced eye. "I am Sofia Martinez, Miss Wilson's attorney." Walter Simmons stood, extending his hand with forced collegiality. Walter Simmons. I was not aware Miss Wilson had secured representation. Clearly, Sophia replied with a tight smile. Frank attempted to regain control of the situation. "This is unnecessary, Amanda. We are just trying to have a family discussion." "A family discussion that involves legal documents pressuring me to give up my inheritance," I countered. "I think legal representation is entirely appropriate." Sophia set her briefcase on the table and addressed Walter directly. "May I see the document you were asking my client to sign?" He hesitated, glancing at Frank, who gave a curt nod. Sophia reviewed the transfer agreement, her expression revealing nothing. When she finished, she looked up with raised eyebrows. "This is quite extraordinary," she said. "You are asking Miss Wilson to voluntarily surrender 80% of her legal inheritance with no consideration in return." "The consideration is family harmony," Walter replied smoothly, "and avoiding a protracted legal battle." "A legal battle you would almost certainly lose," Sophia stated, opening her briefcase. "I have reviewed Mr. Harold Wilson's will thoroughly. It was properly executed, witnessed, and included a physician's certification of mental competency." She removed a document and placed it on the table. "I also have here evidence that attempts were made to access and potentially alter Mr. Wilson's legal documents during his hospitalization." My mother gasped. "That is a lie." "The hospital security system logged an attempt to enter Mr. Wilson's private room after visiting hours on March 10th, Sophia continued calmly. When questioned, the individual claimed to be looking for personal papers. The hospital staff reported the incident. She turned to me. "Amanda, would you like to share your grandfather's letter now?" I removed the envelope from my purse and handed it to Sophia, who read it aloud. As my grandfather's words filled the room, explaining his deliberate choice and reasons for leaving the inheritance to me, my mother's face contorted with anger. "He had no right," she spat when Sophia finished reading. "I am his daughter. He had every legal right to distribute his assets according to his wishes," Sophia replied, "and he clearly states his reasons." I decided it was time to reveal what I knew. "Mom, I am aware of your plans for the money, the sports bar that will likely fail like Jake's other ventures, the vacation home in Florida, the new car for Frank. We deserve nice things," my mother snapped. "After everything we have been through. What you deserve and what my grandfather wanted for his legacy are two different things," I said quietly. Frank stood suddenly, slamming his hand on the table. "Enough, you ungrateful little. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay your family. By bringing in some attorney to threaten us." "I am not threatening anyone," Sophia interjected smoothly. "I am merely ensuring my client's legal rights are protected." I reached into my purse and retrieved my phone, stopping the recording. I should also mention that I have recorded this entire conversation which includes Frank's admission about creating fraudulent documentation to challenge the will and the details of your plans for spending the inheritance. Rachel looked at me with wide eyes. You recorded us? One-party recording is legal in this state, Sophia confirmed. Everything said here would be admissible in court. Walter Simmons cleared his throat, suddenly looking uncomfortable. Perhaps we should adjourn this meeting to consider our positions. That is a good idea, I agreed. But before we do, I want to make something clear. I will not be signing over my inheritance. Not today, not ever. My grandfather trusted me with his legacy, and I intend to honor that trust. My mother began to cry, the tears looking suspiciously theatrical. How can you do this to your own mother, to your family? This is not about hurting you, I said honestly. This is about respecting Grandpa's wishes. He built something meaningful, and he wanted it preserved, not liquidated for luxury purchases. Rachel, who had been quiet throughout the confrontation, suddenly spoke up. Mom, did you really try to get into Grandpa's hospital room to look for his papers? My mother's hesitation before answering told Rachel everything she needed to know. Oh my God, she whispered. This whole time you made it sound like Amanda was manipulating him, but it was you trying to change things. I was his daughter, my mother snapped. Everything he had should have come to me first. Frank put a hand on her arm. Patricia, perhaps we should discuss this privately. But my mother was beyond restraint now. No, I am tired of pretending that money should be mine. My father owed me after all the years I spent dealing with him and his judgmental attitude about how I spent my money. Her outburst hung in the air, revealing the true nature of her relationship with my grandfather. Sophia calmly gathered her documents. I believe we are done here. Amanda, are you ready to leave? I nodded, standing to go, but paused to address my family one last time. I am sorry it came to this. I truly am. But Grandpa made his choice, and I am going to honor it. As we turned to leave, Rachel suddenly stood up. Wait, I want to go with you. Frank glared at her. Sit down, Rachel. Do not be ridiculous. But Rachel grabbed her purse and moved to my side. Number, I am tired of the manipulation. I want to hear Amanda's side without everyone talking over her. As we walked out together, I heard Frank's voice rising behind us, berating my mother for losing control. Walter Simmons was gathering his papers hastily. Jake and Dylan sat in stunned silence. In the driveway, Rachel turned to me with tears in her eyes. I am so sorry, Amanda. I had no idea how bad it was. They made it sound like you were being selfish, but I hugged her tightly. It is okay. They are very convincing when they want something. Sophia tactfully stepped away to give us privacy, walking to her car with a promise to call me later. As Rachel and I stood in the driveway of our childhood home, I felt a weight lifting. The confrontation I had dreaded was over. I had stood my ground, protected my grandfather's legacy, and maybe even begun to repair my relationship with my sister. What happens now? Rachel asked quietly. Now, I said, we figure out what comes next. Together if you want. She nodded, wiping away tears. I would like that. As we drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror at the house where I had grown up. For the first time in weeks, I felt at peace with my decision. My grandfather had trusted me for a reason, and I had proven worthy of that trust today. The days following the confrontation were eerily quiet. No calls from my mother, no texts from Frank, nothing from my stepbrothers. Only Rachel maintained contact, calling daily as she processed the revelations about our family dynamics. It is like I am seeing the past 20 years in a completely different light, she told me during one of our conversations. All those times Mom would tell us we could not afford something basic, then come home with expensive new clothes for herself. Grandpa used to call it magical thinking about money, I replied, spending emotionally rather than logically. I feel so stupid for not seeing it, Rachel sighed. Do not be hard on yourself. They are expert manipulators. I only saw it because Grandpa pointed it out to me consistently over the years. A week after the meeting, the silence broke. Frank left a threatening voicemail while I was at work. "You think you have won, but this is far from over," his voice growled from my phone. "We have options you have not even considered. Sleep tight." I forwarded the message to Sophia, who advised me to document any contact but not respond. She also suggested I consider a restraining order if the threats continued. They did. The next day I found a note on my car windshield. "Families have ways of dealing with traitors." The handwriting matched Frank's distinctive scrawl. 2 days later, Jake showed up at my workplace, causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted him out. He was shouting about me destroying the family as they led him away. After consulting with Sophia, I filed for a restraining order against Frank and Jake. The judge granted it based on the documented threats and harassment. The legal notice only enraged them further, leading to a flurry of angry texts from my mother about how I was criminalizing family disagreements. Could they actually contest the will? I asked Sophia during a follow-up meeting. "They could try," she acknowledged. "But given the precautions your grandfather took, their case would be extremely weak. The real question is whether they are willing to spend the money on legal fees for a fight they would likely lose." As it turned out, they were not. 2 weeks after receiving the restraining order, my mother called with a very different tone. "Amanda," she said, her voice subdued, "we need to talk about a settlement." "There is nothing to settle," I replied. "The inheritance is legally mine." "I know that now," she admitted. "Walter says challenging the will would be expensive with little chance of success. But Amanda, we are still family. Surely there is some arrangement we can come to." I considered her words carefully. Despite everything, she was still my mother. And there was Rachel to consider, still living under their influence. "I will think about it," I said finally. "But any discussion would need to happen with our attorneys present." The settlement meeting occurred at Sophia's office. My mother and Frank arrived with Walter, both looking less confident than during our previous encounter. After some negotiation, we reached an agreement. I would provide a one-time payment to help Rachel clear her student loan debt completely, with the money going directly to the loan servicer rather than through my mother. In return, they would sign legally binding agreements not to contest the will or harass me further about the inheritance. "This is far less than you deserve," my mother complained as she signed the papers. "It is more than I am obligated to provide," I countered. "I am doing this for Rachel, not for you." With the legal matters settled, I turned my attention to honoring my grandfather's legacy. The construction company needed attention first. I met with the long-time employees, many of whom had known me since childhood. They were relieved to learn I intended to keep the business running rather than selling it off. "Your grandfather built this company on relationships and quality work," Jim, the operations manager, told me. "We were worried it would all disappear." "I am not going to pretend I know the construction business," I told them honestly. "But I know numbers and management. I will learn the rest, and I will rely on all of you who have the experience." Over the next few months, I split my time between my accounting job and learning the construction business. Eventually, I made the decision to leave my firm and focus full-time on Wilson Construction. It was challenging work but deeply satisfying to preserve something my grandfather had built from nothing. As for the house, I decided to sell it. The memories were precious, but the practical reality was that I did not need a 4-bedroom home for just myself. The proceeds went into a conservative investment portfolio, just as my grandfather would have advised. Throughout this period, Rachel and I grew closer. After another explosive argument with our mother, she called me in tears. "I cannot stay here anymore," she sobbed. "Every conversation turns into guilt trips about you and the money." "Then, do not stay," I said simply. "My apartment has a spare bedroom. Use it until you figure out your next steps." Rachel moved in the following weekend. Living together as adults was an adjustment for both of us. but it gave us the opportunity to rebuild our relationship without our mother's influence coloring every interaction. With her student loans paid off and a fresh start, Rachel found a better job and eventually her own apartment. She began therapy to address the effects of our mother's manipulation, a step that inspired me to do the same. It is like detoxing, my therapist explained during one session. You have both been exposed to manipulative behaviors for so long that it feels normal. Recognizing those patterns takes time. A year after the inheritance confrontation, I used a small portion of the money to fulfill one of my grandfather's unrealized dreams. He had always talked about starting a scholarship fund for students interested in the building trades. College is not the only path to success, he used to say. This country needs skilled tradespeople who take pride in their work. The Harold Wilson Memorial Scholarship launched with its first 5 recipients that fall. Watching those young people embark on careers in electrical work, plumbing, carpentry, and construction management was one of the proudest moments of my life. 2 years into my new role as business owner, Wilson Construction was thriving. We had expanded into green building techniques, a direction I believed my grandfather would have approved of. The company's reputation for quality and integrity remained strong. My mother reached out occasionally, always with an underlying request for money disguised as concern for my well-being. I maintained polite but firm boundaries, engaging only to the extent I felt comfortable. 3 years after my grandfather's passing, my mother showed up at my office unannounced. She looked older, the lines around her eyes deeper. Frank, I had heard through Rachel, had left her for a younger woman, taking much of their joint assets in the divorce. I want to talk, she said, standing awkwardly in the reception area. Just talk, no requests, no accusations. We went to a coffee shop nearby. For the first time in my memory, she actually asked about my life and listened to the answers. Your grandfather would be proud, she said after I told her about the scholarship program. He always believed in you. He believed in you too, Mom, I said gently. He just worried about your choices. She nodded slowly. I have had a lot of time to think. Losing Frank, watching the way you have managed the business and the inheritance. I was wrong, Amanda. About a lot of things. It was not a complete apology, but from my mother it was unprecedented. We did not magically repair our relationship that day, but it was a beginning, small steps toward a more honest connection. Rachel flourished once freed from our mother's manipulative orbit. She completed a master's degree in social work and began a career helping families navigate difficult transitions. I think I understand now why Grandpa left everything to you, she told me during a dinner celebration after her graduation. You were the only one who would have preserved what mattered to him. As for me, I found a balance between honoring my grandfather's legacy and creating my own path. The business evolved under my leadership, maintaining its core values while adapting to changing markets. The investments grew steadily, providing security without extravagance. Most importantly, I learned to recognize and resist manipulation, to stand firm in my values even when pressured, to distinguish between genuine family loyalty and exploitative demands disguised as love. 5 years after that fateful inheritance, I stood at my grandfather's grave with a bouquet of his favorite yellow roses. I kept my promise, Grandpa, I said quietly. Your legacy is secure. Your values live on. And I am stronger than I ever knew I could be. Walking back to my car, I reflected on the journey. The inheritance had been about so much more than money. It was about trust, responsibility, and the courage to protect something valuable against those who would squander it. Sometimes standing your ground is the greatest act of love you can offer. Not just for those who trusted you, but for yourself. Have you ever had to stand firm when everyone was pressuring you to give in? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to protect their boundaries. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, true family supports your growth, not just their own interests.